Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Winter Moon Podcast. I'm David.
I'm Nathan.
And we have here a very special guest today. We have LJ. What's up, LJ?
Hey, good to see everybody.
So for those of you that don't know, LJ has been deeply involved in this community and the game since its inception. And so this is like really a really good chance to talk to someone who's like one of the OGs. He's been here since the beginning. And he's had, varying degrees of involvement. And LJ, I would love to hear you give like an overview of what your role in the community is these days.
Oh man, yeah. It's hard to stick to one thing, I guess, because I tend to jump around a lot. But I think my focus these days is primarily around helping with and running big events. I've been very focused on local events and the national level events, and I still continue to write articles for Atomic Mass Games to preview new Legion units and a little bit of MCP here and there.
Yeah, so those scene to stats articles that we're seeing, those are all you.
A good chunk of them, not like every single one, but I would say the majority that you've seen for the last 4 years have been mine, yeah.
Go ahead, Nathan, I cut you off, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say exactly what you said. Although LJ just shattered my world, I thought you wrote every single one, LJ.
No, there are a couple that AMG saved for themselves. I think the Bad Batch one was a notable one that they took a crack at, as well as some of the original Battle Force ones. But I did get to kick that off back with all the Shadow Collective stuff when they started in 2021, 2022 it was. And then a lot of ones that you're going to see and have seen have been stuff I've contributed on.
So you didn't do the Bad Batch one?
No, the Bad Batch you can knock off your bingo tracker.
Okay, because I was thinking before you said anything that the Bad Batch was the best one that I ever read.
Well, that's good, because that means the people that made the game wrote it. So you're complimenting AMG there, which I appreciate.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
That's my Uno card for the night. I only get one of those.
So I was going to ask you, LJ, you mentioned that you are a very big community organizer. So you're someone who organizes local events. I know that you've been active in the Tampa area, organizing events that I've been lucky to go to, a couple of which I've won.
I was going to say, I've been going to and winning. That's
thank you.
Correct.
I'll just drop that in there. It's my little ego boost.
Got to rep Winter Moon.
Yeah, got to rep Winter Moon. Yeah, exactly. So, I just wanted to shout that out and just be like, ask you, it must give you a lot of joy to do this because you've been very active doing it.
Yeah. I like playing Legion, and I've been playing Legion for a long time, but there's just a different like set of neurons that's activated in the brain when I step back and I just see people playing the game, and it's been like, yeah, I set that up. I got these people to come here and have a good time. I will always remember a conversation I had with Alex Davey at LVO 2020 when we were sitting there looking at everybody playing Legion in the hall, and I poked him and I was like, you ever wonder how much money you've got people to spend over the last couple of years? And he was like, yes, actually, I think about it all the time. Because I'm sitting back thinking, like, I'm running this one event. We're a little over 100 people. That's airfare, that's hotels, that's food for the weekend, that's the tickets to get here, that's the time and attention they put into their army. Like, that feels like a lot. And then I'm thinking of that as I stand next to the guy who made the game, and I'm like, oh yeah, he probably has similar thoughts on occasion. And so I just like to look at the totality of something and be like, yeah, people are having a good time. When the communities are represented, when people are laughing, when they're rolling the dice and they're having fun, that to me is more fun than playing a game of Legion. And I really enjoy playing the game. So that just tells you kind of what that does for me as a person. I've always enjoyed facilitating events. It definitely goes back a long time. I will say that one of the things that kind of upped my game was running online events for a game called Mech Warrior Online. We were running little mini tournaments where you were doing either 1v1s, 2v2s, or 4v4s called the Scrap Heap. And then eventually Dos Hombres, which was the name of the painting competition this year at LVO, where you had to submit exactly 2 miniatures together. And just like facilitating those like little mini tournaments, it was like, oh, this is something like I'm really interested in doing, and I have fun doing it. And then I stepped away from it for a little bit, came back, and eventually Legion was coming out, and we were starting to organize stuff on TTS, and that led to the Invader League. And so that gave me kind of the courage, I would say, to go do it for Legion. And when Frontline was looking for somebody to run their stuff for LVO 2019, I swept in and was like, I'd like to try this for real. I've already ran one Legion event. It can't be that hard to do it in person. It's a little bit harder to do it in person, but
Yeah.
a lot of the coordination, a lot of the getting it out there so people could see it and want to participate it, that I learned trying to run an event over a digital format like TTS, actually did translate directly to running stuff in person. And those are lessons that I have continued to use and I have learned and execute over the last couple of years.
So we opened up a few things here when with this last kind of conversation we've had. So like we have listeners now that have been around since the inception of the game. We have listeners that are probably just joining us for 2.6. People who have been attracted to the new game. We're going to have a series of new releases coming soon. There's going to be a big panel at Adepticon, which we're going to get to in a little while. But I just wanted to just go back a little bit and just try to give the background on all those things. So LVO 19 was like the first like major that wasn't I don't think, was it officially part of the OP system? I don't remember, because I know they had maximum firepower in August 18. That was the first like OP of the game.
So it was an official qualifier after tickets went on sale. We had like 10 people signed up when I jumped in, and we ended at 62. And it was whatever not the nationals that Gen Con ended up being, where they only had one perk. It wasn't a continental,
right?
But it was whatever the one step below that was. So it became an official event very quickly. Yes.
Right. So for those of you that are like are not familiar with the history of the game, it's good because we're reviewing this, because this is sort of like, where did Legion come from? Because OP now is much different. Like Worlds was not an open tournament. There was this was what they would call FFG style OP, is what we would call it, because FFG, the former company that had the game when it came out, created an OP system that a lot of people sort of came to expect moving forward. And there's all sorts of controversy surrounding the direction that OP took. We can get into that. I don't know if we want to open that can of worms. I don't know if that's very on brand for us. It's kind of thinking that's distasteful. I kind of agree. I think that that's probably not going to be a thing again, because I think the landscape is just way different in 2025, and AMG just has a different they have different thoughts. They're a different group of people, so they have different abilities on what they want to do, or different how to say it, a different idea, basically. But this is good though, because we're getting into sort of the history of the game and where it all came from. And I mean, LVO 19 was a crazy tournament, like in terms of like we did like a 5-round day or something like that. We had people playing for like I played all 5 rounds. I won my final game and I broke down crying because I seriously did. Well, because I almost lost, and I rolled a double block on a saboteur or not a saboteur, a sniper, to secure a recover the supplies box, and I practically broke down because that saved me. And then there was it's a whole thing. but LVO 19 was an amazing event. The culture was wildly different. It was kind of the first foray into this sort of thing that the community was taking. And this is all just to give the listeners who are new just that impression of where the game came from, and where some of the sort of the more hard case career competitive players, the people you might call sweats, where we used to come from. This was kind of the old school way of viewing it. But speaking of LVO, you are now in charge of, I presume you're in charge of the LVO Invitational series. I was really eager to ask you how that's been going, because I don't think I've ever sat down with you and talked about the genesis of the event, or where it all came from. Where did this all come from? Because there was obviously a desire to have an invitational of some type. right? Once the game transitioned.
So I actually think you'd be closer to the Genesis than you probably realize, because you're familiar with somebody named Kicker.
Yes, I am familiar with Kicker.
So Kicker was the events organizer for Frontline Gaming, and he did many other things up until this last fall when he left. He moved on, and he's kind of forming his own company, his own ventures, and
Yeah,
I'll
I believe
actually
it's
get to
called
see
Green
him.
Banner.
Yes, Green Banner should be at Adepticon. They're actually helping run some stuff there, so
Yeah.
we'll see him in a little bit. But anyway, he, is part of Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming has a system where you can go to events, and the larger the events and the better your placing at that event, the more points you get, and then X amount of events are counted into an overall score, and that puts you on a public leaderboard. So you can see, for example, like one of my friends from Southern California, he is nationally ranked in Flesh Eater Courts for Age of Sigmar. He's been like in the top 3 of Flesh Eater Courts for all their scores that they record, and he can go to a list somewhere and be like, yep, this person is me, I do really well. And then there's an event that culminates every year, or season that culminates every year at the LVO, where for 40k specifically, people participate for a large sum of money, comparatively speaking, and best in faction awards, where they can say, hey, during this competitive season, I am the number one, Drukari player or Flesh Eater Courts player or whatever have you.
Right.
So Frontline was kind of already doing their own thing, because there was no organized play for Games Workshop for a period of time. They stepped in as the big company who ran tournaments, and in the more recent years, GW's kind of back on the thing, and they do their own national level events, and now the two systems kind of live in harmony. Well, Kicker saw that Star Wars Legion was selling, very quickly when it came to the LVO every year, and we had a great community. So he was like, hey, like, I want you to do a thing where you go to the frontline events for Legion, and you get invited to a special, tournament, like a top 8 at LVO the following year. And I was like, no. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew that I had a deployment coming up in the near future, and I didn't want to create this big system and then saddle it on somebody else and then leave.
Right. It's just not
So
fair.
we kept the idea in the back of our mind. We really liked that idea of even just doing something nice, where, like, if you place number 1 at one of the big frontline events, maybe you got like a special thing if you attended the LVO. Kicker was talking about crazy things like getting you a limo to pick you up at the airport, drive you to the Rio. Like, he had so many fun ideas like that in mind, and we kept teasing this back and forth, but we shelved everything, and then I went and I was gone. I was deployed, and then I came back last April. And I came back, I got settled, and then as soon as I got back to the States, the people I had worked with back in Tampa were like, "Hey, we'd like to give you a contractor job. Uh, can you leave in like 3 weeks and come start working here at the beginning of May?" And I was like, I guess. And with my wife's blessing, we figured out that path. So I was kind of getting everything ready, and I was really focused on the home front. And AMG back to back said, "Hey, Worlds is going to be Worlds, and we're not going to do invites anymore." And I had just joined up forces with Jordan from Luminous Gaming, and he was like, "Hey, like, I'm going to essentially make you like a special project manager. You will figure something out." That news immediately dropped, and we both looked at each other and were like, I think we found out what we're going to do. So we dusted off the old LVO plan and talked to Tyson, who ran the LVOIS for Marvel Crisis Protocol, where the system started, and whose beautiful kind of skeleton we have used. And from there, we just got our foundational documents set up, ready to go. We kind of had base products, like I said, already in the pipe. We just needed to clean them up, dust them off, and get them out there. And then a couple weeks later, we had our first events that counted for the circuit. So that was May of 2024. The season lasts for about 7 months or so. End of December is when we kind of cut off the last event. And then we took all of that work and all of the tournaments that the community ran, and we turned it into the first Las Vegas Open Invitational Series Championship. Our first season consisted of 122 events across 16 different countries. It was somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 unique players that participated within that system, and that generated a top 62 that actually were able to show up and play at LVO, and then our last couple spots were actually people that were taken from the GT that performed well on the first day, and made it so we had an even 64 players when we started on the first day of the champs.
So for those of our listeners who don't know as much about what LVOIS is, you just explained a little bit about it, but it's also going to be kind of different this year than it was the previous year. Partly because the date is changing, right? I understand
Yes.
usually LVO and LVOIS, well, only one season of LVOIS so far, but general LVO has been held in January.
Right.
Can you tell us about some of the changes that are coming to LVO in general, but then also if you could just even just give us a broad overview for people who've never heard of it. What is the LVOIS? How is that going to look this year? Some of those things.
Yeah, so the Las Vegas Open Invitational Series has two forms of events that if you are a TO, you're running a standard Star Wars Legion tournament, you can say, hey, I want to be part of the series, and we'll go, okay, cool. You are a full qualifier, where the winner gets an automatic invite to the LVO, and the top 8 get points, or you are a points only event where just the top 8 get points. The way this system is built is we invite X number of people, depending on how many full qualifiers we hold, and then we have a set number that we're looking to fill too, and we start inviting people from the points only list, depending on their top 8 scores from their 3 best events. So if you've been to 10 different LVOIS events and you got a second place, a fourth place, a fifth place, and then like an eighth, a sixth, a seventh, whatever, you would take whatever your top 3 scores are, and it puts you on a list that is publicly available. Anybody can see it anytime on our website. And so what we do is we use that to kind of control how many people we have, so the numbers make sense within the format we run in Vegas. And then, in this last year's case, it all leads up to a culminating event, which was this past January at the LVO, where people played in a 6-round round robin tournament that determined a final overall winner. That person gets an automatic invite to the next LVOIS championship.
Now, just to
Any
clarify real briefly, round robin or Swiss?
Swiss. Yeah.
Swiss. Okay. Yeah, I was like,
Man,
whoa. Okay.
64 person round
Round
robin.
robin.
We're doing Invader League all over again.
Ooh,
There for a
okay.
month.
No, not
Sorry, I didn't
not
mean to
quite.
break your flow, but I wanted to
No,
clarify.
you're good. You're good. And so anyway, so yeah, basically anybody that is running a standard Legion event can submit their event to be part of the LVOIS. And so I kind of hinted at this earlier, but we started in May of 2024, and the event culminated in January 2025 at the LVO. We started in January 2025 this year, and we're going to end in October because, as we'll talk about in a second, the LVO moved.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually are running on a fairly similar time frame. We're only a couple months different than what we did for the previous season. But because this is an unannounced change, and we were expecting to run January to January like we did the previous year, there are a couple things that I want to make sure TOs know who may already be familiar with the system. Some of the rules that govern the system is that you can only run an event at a single location, so that's like one store, for example, every 90 days. We shorten that to 60 days to help compensate for the fact that you might have planned to have an event in October that is no longer legal because, it's going to fall into the next year's series because it's after this upcoming LVO. We also had our cutoff day for events be December 1st was the last day you could hold an event, and December 15th was the last day that you could accept an invite and say that you are coming. We just pushed that up to September. So September 1st is the cutoff date for events that are happening this year. September 15th is the last day you can raise your hand and say, yep, I'm going to use that invite. Again, that helps us invite people off the points list, so we know pretty much exactly how many people are going to attend an LVO and make it so we don't have to be like, oh, we have 300 people coming. Suddenly we need to make a lot more tables and we have no time to do that. So it's kind of a lot of in a lot of ways, it is like lessons learned from the FFG OP system, with the way that like they just sold a bunch of kits, and the number that they were going to get back was extremely variable.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little bit better control over that because of the way that this system is executed. Other things that are kind of important to know: you don't necessarily have to follow the Galactic Conquest rules to run an LVOS event. You can run your own, like if you want to use chess clocks or show the timer or what have you, you can do that and still run an LVOS event. We actually have kind of like a two paths. Hey, either run an event by the GC, or you can use any of these optional rules. This year we actually added team events, because if you look at Longshanks, the way that they run like 3-4 player team events, it creates not only like a standings that shows what the team standings are, but it then ranks you by individual scores.
Hmm.
And that individual score page can be used to submit LVOIS results and get people their points. So we actually have started to branch off into that as a quote unquote side format. You still have to be playing normal games of Legion, but for example, the WTC, the World Team Championships, is going to count as an LVOIS qualifier because we can make it work with Longshanks.
Right. So just so that people are clear, it's not doubles in terms of team. It's
Right.
singles still, but it's groups of 3, 4, 5, etc.
Right. What
Right.
have you. Actually, Longshanks supports up to teams of 8. And if anybody ever does
Wow.
a team event with 8 players, please let me know, because I'd love to send you prize support.
That would be like a pretty wild event. I imagine that would be pretty cool to get like 2 teams of 8, have like the best players from each country or something like that come play.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make that happen in like a year and a half. Who knows? Depends on where the game is.
Other reasons the system is good: there are no minimums on the tournaments. One of the things we really, really loved seeing this year was, if you were, hey, I can only do like 4 to 8 people because my community's super new and small, great. Send your champion to Vegas.
Yeah.
And what we did by opening that up and allowing, events of any size instead of that 16 cutoff that AMG had previously, was it actually kept the LVO attendance above the bell curve that we had been seeing for GT attendance this last year. LVO 2023, which was the last one that I ran, had 143 or 145 people was like our total on a single day for the weekend. We had 160 on a single day, and that was after people had dropped from the GT because they wanted to go enjoy Vegas this last year. I think in part because we offered invites, and when somebody from a community had an invite, more often than not, they brought a friend or they brought a couple of friends that supported them by playing in the GT and were rooting them on. And so it really created a very positive effect in our community, as in the LVO bubble. But also, I've seen now that we've ran the series for a year that it has also trickled down to the store level. So a great example of this is what we're doing in Tampa, or what they're doing in the Oklahoma and Texas communities. On the 1st of January, they set their calendar so the LVOIS events are every 90 days. That meant the store could tell you your entire year of Legion when the year started. So it helped the stores create a schedule that then benefited their players, and it has increased their overall attendance count, because now people know, like, hey, I already know 9 months in advance that we're having the October qualifier. That's already proved on the schedule, and so now I can plan that ahead of time in my schedule too. We're not putting these things on the calendar last minute.
Right. So you can push this to the organizers sort of downstream and say, if you have a calendar in advance, more people will come. It's less like, people getting like, maybe less than 90 days notice that a qualifier is happening. And then like your attendance is going to be, 50-50. You have no idea what people are going to be doing. But if you can like create a calendar in advance, then you have some idea when the qualifier is going to be. People are going to be more inclined to show up, because they'll be able to clear their schedules. They'll have plenty of time to do that.
Right. And you saw it at the fight over Florum. At the closing remarks, I was like, hey, by the way, it's March 8th, March 14th, whatever. June 14th, that's going to be the next one. 3 months in advance, you can already put that on your calendar.
Yeah, it's already on my calendar. I'm going again because I love the quality of player that this tournament brings out. And I want to play against people who are really good too. So
And
Dave was
that's
showing up and winning your tournaments and taking your trophies.
he is, which is why you can pass down all the way to 8th place the invite. So if you've got one person that steps in and they win more than one, that's okay. We could still get other people in on the action. Or if you just want to go play at a tournament and my fake internet points don't mean anything to you, it also doesn't, hurt anybody. If you suddenly show up and you win and you have no intent of going to Vegas, you just tell the organizer, hey, I can't go to Vegas. I already know that in advance, or I don't intend to travel. Well, then it'll just pass down to the next person.
Right.
So it's built to just support the tournament organizer at the lowest level by creating that community that people want to go to and be a part of. Because I can't tell you how many games I've played that haven't had, maybe they're not the biggest games at this time, but the community at my local store was solid. That's how I got into Armada. That's how I got into X-Wing, because the community was there and they were showing up for game night and they were playing. If you facilitate that creation and you get people to create those things at their own store level, it's going to positively affect your end line, your bottom line,
Mm-hmm.
what have you, because you're going to create that stability, that consistency, and people are going to want to show up and play, because at the end of the day it's also a good game that people enjoy playing. So I really find that it helps kind of, like I said, facilitate that. Now that we've done it for a year, we already have 60 or so events that are signed up on the calendar. So we're already halfway to our quota that we reached last year, which is awesome. And I feel like I personally have not been like going direct to TOs and like trying to ask them to sign up for events as much. We've had more people just re-sign up because they did it last year. They saw it was easy, and they want to do it again. If you are somebody that is interested in running an official qualifier, all it takes is going to the website, which is LVOIS.com, hitting the Legion side. You can sign up for MCP, but it might not go as well for you. And then you fill out a Google form with your event information. We approve it, tell you what kind of qualifier you are, and then when your event's over, you just submit another Google form. That's it.
And just to plug this a little bit more, I mean, obviously TOs, so you want to do this. If you're a player and you're listening to this cast and you know you've got a local tournament coming up, but you don't know if the people in charge know about the LVOIS, just suggest it to them. Because like LJ just said, it's easy. You just fill out a form. There's not really a big burden required or put on anybody to make it an LVOIS qualifier. So if you know your local store or whatever has an event coming up, try to see if why not fill out the information. The cool thing about LVOIS, if it's something that you are interested in, if you're even thinking that maybe at some point October rolls around, you might want to head out to Vegas and play in that event. It's pretty cool because it's as far as I know, it's the biggest Legion Invitational event that's out there right now, and so there are big events where lots of players just show up, like Adepticon, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes here. But the LVOIS, it's all players, who have played well and placed well at events, and so it's kind of a unique. It's kind of a unique experience, and so if you're someone who's looking to broaden your competitive horizons, uh, we'll just say that's one that you should consider and try to get your local community involved in it if you have even a little bit of interest, right? Because like LJ was just explaining, it doesn't hurt, right? You can always play, rack up the points, and then you're not necessarily committing to anything.
Yeah, and if we talked a big game about really getting your community integrated and doing this constantly and stuff. If you feel like you're on the other end of the spectrum where maybe you're not the one putting on the event, you've got a store that likes to run events, but maybe they're not as tapped into the overall community. Longtime friend Tim Hannon is a great example of this. Their store likes to run things. He says, "Hey, we should make this one a qualifier," and he signs them up. They approve it, and then he's the one that helps them submit the results. So sometimes it just takes that little extra prodding and raising your hand and saying, hey, I'd love our community to be part of this greater system, and then just doing that extra little bit to get you there. And maybe another hook that you could use if you're trying to get your community to buy in is go to the website and go look at some of the things that are provided there. As far as it's got a suggested event packet, it's got alternate rules that you can use. That's also where we house the Legion chess clocks rules for people that would like to use those and see how we're using chess clocks in games of 2.6,
Right.
as well as something we're particularly proud of, which is the branding guide. The branding guide that we have on there not only makes LVOIS events look consistent from Legion event to Legion event, but also between us, MCP, and eventually Shatterpoint, which is getting added on here to the near future. But there's a bunch of links in the branding packet to standard templates that we made on Canva that create a store poster, that create, like a Facebook banner or an Instagram square. And they don't have to be for LVOIS. You can just take the template and use it and put your store picture, your date, your ticket price, whatever you want to use on there, and just make your events look better. Make them look more professional, make them look like you and your community and how you want your community to be represented, and play Legion.
That's such a sweet idea, having like a social media, like a press kit kind of ready to
Mm-hmm.
go for a local event. And like, as we were speaking, I was thinking like just how grassroots this has to be. AMG, they're going to do everything they can to create their vision of organized play, but the LVOIS is sort of like a parallel system, and it's totally grassroots. Like it's outside of their purview. It's something that the players put together. It's like community organized OP, and I don't think one is better than the other or whatever. Right? That's a whole other conversation, and probably not for this show. But what I'm trying to say is that um, it's really up to the people involved to create those opportunities for their communities to come together. And I'm lucky that I live in an area with a couple of great organizers. Not everyone is so lucky. And I people really, I don't want to say something negative here, but there's there's a perception in certain areas that Legion is dying somehow. I think that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, I really just want to address that briefly. I don't think there's any measure that, quote, the game is dying. It might be at a low ebb in your area, but these things come and go in waves, right? Like something that store owners have told me over and over again is that these things come and go in waves. People play multiple systems. Sometimes some games have really good years. Sometimes some games are trying to relaunch their entire product line, right? Like us. So, these things cycle around, and Legion is not as poised, I think, to make a comeback in a big way because we've got these new releases, and like we even saw today, the previews of the new Stormtrooper Rebel Trooper boxes are on the Asmodee store, like, and of course we saw Ahsoka's box as well. And so it's not like the game is dying. Like, come on, that's just not true. So I just wanted to put that out there just briefly as we talk, just to sort of counteract the sort of negativity that I've seen sometimes. I really don't believe that there's any truth to those ideas. It's like it's like Mark Twain, right? The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. Like, it's very much that kind of thing.
I mean, hey, look, when we have the largest LVO ever, and locally, we have 18 people show up for a random stir tournament, somehow Legion returned, dog.
Yeah, somehow. Thank you,
No,
Poe.
the way I like to explain it to people, or at least when I've had these discussions, it's not really
Yeah.
explaining. It's just kind of like my, view from my level, is I think our landscape has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Legion had focal points, at least in the United States, that the communities were centered around where the game originally got big, and some scenes have not caught up, or things have changed, or they have moved. David, you are a great example of this. You are
Mm-hmm.
also an OG, and you are not doing the same things that you were doing. You adapted, you changed, and you grew, which I
Right.
think is a very strong example to show like some communities took that and embraced it and made themselves better. And so it's just a shift in focus. What I saw at LVO that personally really reinvigorated my excitement for the game was, Arizona coming out with 20 people with matching jerseys.
Amazing.
You know, with NorCal representing, with Southern California representing, with the local, like the Vegas locals who have always been present, who have never made like the biggest splash at the event, having a Vegas local come out and win the GT.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that was something where it was always other people stepping on their turf, coming in and winning LVO. And now we had a local throw down and come out of nowhere and win, you know, a 118 player GT. So I think that's what I would like to, you know, remind people when they see, you know, podcasters and blog posts and, you know, even their local community talk about this, is just remember that Legion is a vast and complex landscape, and it might not be that it's dying, it's just shifting, I think. And that's a process, you know.
Yeah, podcasters always have the worst opinions.
Yeah,
You can never
we
trust
do.
those podcasters.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's LVOIS.
Yeah.
I am, like I said, more than happy to talk about it if you need help getting started off the ground. And I highly recommend you check out the website, check out our foundational documents if you have other questions, or you just want to see what events are on the calendar and where an LVOIS event might be happening near you.
Do you want to just plug the website, and is there like a contact form?
So the LVOIS.com is our primary address. LVOIS.com, not the LVOIS. And then LVO Legion Event at gmail.com is the primary email that we use. And that's where we take in and answer questions from TOs and whatnot. There also is a tournament organizer server that we've been running for more than a couple years now, where if you find myself, Talk Polite on Discord, or Luminous Gaming Jordan, wherever he may be found, we can send you an invite and you can talk with fellow TOs about how to run the best Legion events you possibly can.
So
Well,
I've got a question for you while
Mhm.
you're here with us. You said we don't have to necessarily follow the GC docs.
Mhm.
I've got a homebrew Qui-Gon Jinn unit. He's awesome. 5/4 slots, 60 points, Pierce 4. But to balance him, he has a keyword where he gets one shot by Darth Maul. Can I use my homebrew units at my LVOIS events? And can I have the rules be so only I am allowed to use that unit? Is that cool?
Depends. Exactly how many beers are you giving me at Adepticon?
Whatever the required number is.
Ooh, that
ooh,
was
that's a high
that
number.
was the right answer. That was the correct answer. I'm gonna give it a solid maybe, just for
Okay.
you.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
Okay.
All
I
right.
don't care. So any that fly my way, I'll slide over to you.
Check.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our plug segment. Thank you so much, LJ. Before we move on, for being our guest, and we're going to have you on for the rest of the show, of course, to talk about Adepticon. So we are going to go into the plugs real quick. Of course, we are Winter Moon Wargaming. We are streaming Adepticon, the World Championships, from March 27th through the 31st, 30th, yeah, 30th. Okay. A Winter Moon Wargaming on YouTube. That's youtube.com/at Winter Moon Wargaming. All the events are there. You can save them. I think they're in a playlist. I created all the stream entries today, so they're all there. And of course, if you enjoy reading information about Star Wars Legion, we have a Substack newsletter. So that is going to be wintermoonwargaming.substack.com. We also have paid strategy guides if you're so inclined. I write a lot about CIS right now because that's kind of my current preoccupation. We also do general articles about the game. That's going to be wintermoonwargaming.substack.com. And of course, if you want to buy us a coffee, we'd be very grateful. You can go to ko-fi.com/wintermoonwargaming. We also have Instagram, Facebook, and a public Discord, which are all going to be linked in the description. And one last thing, we are also going to be doing a giveaway during the week of Adepticon. It's going to open on the 24th. And that giveaway is sponsored by Extra Turn Games, of which Winter Moon Wargaming is an affiliate. Extra Turn Games is a local store down here in Central Florida, the Orlando area. I believe it's out of Deltona. They're going to be sponsoring some giveaway prizes for us, and you can start entering on the 24th. Basically, every day you can visit our website that's going to be linked in the description to enter into the giveaway. There are multiple entries depending on how you interact with our social media. And then during the live broadcast of the tournament, that is of Worlds, during the live broadcast, you can get a secret keyword by listening to the stream that will give you bonus entries, and you can get a new keyword every day and you can get bonus entries just by watching live. So there would be plenty of opportunities to enter. There are going to be giveaways for multiple game systems, including Legion, Star Wars Unlimited, a bunch of other games. So we'll make sure that you have a list of all those prizes once they're all established. We're still kind of in the process of building out the prize list, but we're trying to make sure that it's extensive, and we'll have plenty of winners. So there's lots of chances for people to win, and hopefully get you to interact with our social media. So with that, we're going to move on to Adepticon, and I have one big announcement about Adepticon, and that is that Wintermoon Wargaming is interviewing Will Schick, head of studio, at 9 a.m. Central Time on Saturday, March 29th. We're going to review everything that gets announced on the Friday night panel, and we're going to be asking questions. So I wanted to invite people, if you're listening to the show drops on Friday this week. So we're recording now. It's the 17th. So Friday should be, I don't remember the day, the 20th? 21st? Okay, thank you. Yes, the 21st. So on the 21st, when you're listening to the show, I want you to write in Wintermoon Mailbag. So wintermoonmailbag at mail.com. We'll have the mail in the description as well. And see if you want to ask questions that will then get vetted, and then see if we can ask Will. I just want to open that up so that people can ask their questions of Will, head of studio, on Saturday morning. We're gonna have him for about 45 minutes of time, and then we'll hop into the first round of the top 64 on Saturday. And I am super hype about the Adepticon experience that we're all going to have. We're going to be in a new location. We were in the Schaumburg Renaissance last year. Schaumburg has served Adepticon well for the time it's been there. We are now in a new location in Milwaukee at the Baird Center, the old haunt of Gen Con, I believe, which to me indicates that that Adepticon is kind of moving up in the world, so to speak, because they need that bigger space now. I think that's really, really awesome. There's a virtual tour of the Baird Center you can go on. And audience, we are cooking up so much for this stream. That's No Moon podcast will be there. We're going to have the defending world champ, Ollie Dyer, doing some commentary during the heat he's not playing in, so he'll be on the stream. We're going to have Andy Terrell, a UK tournament organizer. Both of these guys from the UK, they're going to be on the That's No Moon podcast, and they're going to be helping us out with the stream commentary. Most of Wintermoon will be there. In fact, won't all of us be there? Yeah, all of us will be there, actually.
Oh, yeah, I think we'll all be there.
Yeah, we'll all be there. We'll have some merch at the streaming area. And it's going to be really, really awesome. We've got like artwork we're doing for the stream. We got overlays we're doing. We got like automation now. We're going to be able to like pop the cards on the screen. You know, the dice will still be rolled out on the overlay, and it'll be really, really good viewing, I think, and the game will be very intelligible for everyone who's watching. It will be a great watch. That is going to be my goal for the weekend, is to make it a great watch for everyone that's tuning in. And then by the time this episode of the podcast airs, there will also be a page on the Wintermoon Substack website where you can get all of the information that I am spewing out right now. It's a lot of information. It's a veritable fire hose. We have a lot going on for this Adepticon, but I am super excited. I wanted to ask LJ, what is your role this year with Adepticon?
That is a good question. I am returning as the head consular or head judge for Star Wars Legion.
All right, are you excited about that?
I mean, look, I hate rules, so I guess if I have to be. No, I had this big talk with Josh about it, because Josh Hale, he ran Adepticon the previous year, which was not the plan from the start. You know, he kind of got it thrust upon him and ended up having to run this big thing. And as the following year went on, he told Hank, he was like, hey, I want to do it again. I want to do it from the start this time. And Hank came to me and was like, well, hey, I know you couldn't help this year, but you have helped previous Adepticons. Do you want to help again? And so I told him, I was like, hey, if you want Josh to run it, I would happy to return as a judge or be the head judge or support in some way, because Adepticon to me was always like a mecca of tournaments that I had always wanted to go to, and finally did get to start going to. And so as the year went on, Josh asked to be a judge for the LVO. That was awesome because it allowed me to elevate him to run the GT, so we could practice kind of working together. We didn't kill each other at this past LVO, which is always a great sign.
Amazing.
And so he kept me on and asked if I wanted to be his head judge for Adepticon. So that is a role that I have performed for Adepticon before. The first year I went in 2019, I helped basically get everything ready, but then ended up playing the whole time. That was the first high command, which was an awesome experience, and I did very well there. But I did want to return to helping with it, and then the next year COVID happened and there was no Adepticon. The year
Right.
after, COVID still happened and there was no Adepticon. The year after that, I was like, no, I'm coming back. I'm doing this thing. And we did this thing, and I got to help as the head judge for that. So this will be my second time doing that, and I'm really excited because, again, I love Adepticon. It's got so many tournaments for games that you would think have no right having a huge tournament. Like, you'll go and you'll be like, man, I didn't realize this game had 64 people that would show up for a tournament for that game. I think the year that I was head judge previously, Arena Rex, that was the one that was like, why? How are so many people playing this game? Like, I just barely heard about it. So to me, it's always been a spectacle. I love seeing other events' tables and their miniatures, and getting to do like a demo or two here and there. So for me, I'm really excited to return, and I get to do it in a role that I've already done before. So that'll be exciting.
So LJ, can you tell us a little bit about what a head consular does? There's consulars, there's like EOs, people running the whole thing, and obviously head consulars somewhere in between there. So what is that role? What do you actually do?
So the way that I like to look at it, and this is kind of developed over the years with myself and Nima, who was the head judge of this past LVO, and him and I have worked on many, many events over the last 6 years. The way
Now that's a
I like
name
to
I've
think,
not heard in a long time.
and I'm sure he would love that you said that.
Yeah.
The relationship that we tend to have is that the tournament organizer or the event organizer, they're what we call future operations. They worry about what is happening tomorrow, what is the next thing that has to occur, and the head judge is worrying about what's happening right now. They're overseeing the people that you have out in the tournament, which are usually going to be your consulars or your judges or even the desk staff, and they're making sure that what's happening right now is running smoothly. Most people will look at that position and they'll think about, obviously, they'll think about the judge side, about answering rules questions. So Nima, for example, would walk around and somebody raised their hand and said, Judge, if all of his available, people were busy, he would go answer the question. Easy. That's something that every judge on the judge team should be able to do. But they also serve kind of a more important function to be able to elevate if there is a disagreement in a ruling that a judge has made. So a judge comes to your table, they say that X unit cannot do Y thing, and you say, no, I'm pretty sure they can do Y thing, and they'll say, hey, sounds good, I'm going to escalate it. They'll confer with the head judge, and usually the head judge or head consular's ruling is final. And then that helps keep the pace of play moving, which that's kind of point number two. Point number two is to keep things moving, because you are on a schedule and your time is a valuable resource when you're playing a game of Star Wars Legion. The third, and again, the reason I really value having that second person is just to have somebody, like I said, is thinking about what's going on right now, that is, they're going to be well versed in kind of the pulse and the tempo of the room. They know what people are talking about, they know what people are saying, they know what the mood is, because they are walking around amongst the tables and talking to people. If you are the TO and you are there at a table solving a problem, either something has gone wrong or you are doing something wrong. because again, you should be focused on what's going to happen next. Why? Because that makes for a smoother event overall, because you are constantly making sure future things that might be problems are not problems because you have already taken care of them. So I really evaluate, or value, and will try to be that kind of person who is making sure what is going on right now is running smoothly, so that the EO can be very focused on what's going to happen next, and we can have a good day tomorrow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, actually. A couple things from what you were saying that I wanted to highlight for listeners, particularly people who, especially people if you're planning on going to either Adepticon or another large tournament sometime soon and you've never been before. You'll hear this a lot of places, but if you haven't heard it before, it is okay to call judges. That's why they're there. You don't need to feel like you're doing something wrong. You don't need to feel like you're being a jerk. This is a normal part of high level competitive play. Sometimes there's a rules interaction that you and your opponent you disagree on. You can't remember with certainty who's right. Sometimes there's a line of sight or a cover call that's really close, and you need that third unbiased opinion to get it right. And it is okay and totally normal to call a judge. You should never feel bad about doing it. If your opponent does it, don't feel bad that your opponent did it. This is a normal part of competitive play. That's why they're there. Now, something I wanted else to bring up, because this is what LJ touched on. There is the head consular. He's there if there's a disagreement with you and a judge. You want to be, if a judge tells you something and they're confident about it, you shouldn't argue with it, right? You don't want to get into a habit of going back and forth with the judge if they say something is true. Now, the caveat to that, if there's a rule that you know for a fact, so I'll tell a story to illustrate this. I was playing at a large tournament once, and to be clear, judges are people. They don't have perfectly encyclopedic knowledge of all the rules, and they're really tired. They get there before you do, and they leave after you do, and they're working very hard all day, and their breaks are shorter, right? So they get tired, right? And they answer 50 questions. We had someone come in, and the judge didn't. It was ruling about force choke. I was saying, you can use force choke, and it does not require line of sight. My opponent wasn't sure, so he wanted to call a judge, which again, no big deal, right? But so the judge came in, and the guy wasn't so sure. He said, I think you do have to have line of sight to use force choke. No, you do not, right? This is the rule, and it says it pretty much on the card that you don't need line of sight. And so I politely suggested. I said, hey, if you're not super sure, is it all right if we get a second opinion? Judge said yes, because he knew he wasn't 100% sure. Called in the second judge, who I think was the head judge. Head judge clarified. So that you do sort of have that avenue where if a judge has made a call that for a fact is wrong, you do have a way to sort of politely suggest that they elevate it. But if it's like a subjective call, if it's like line of sight, if it's cover, if you're not 100% sure and the judge is 100% sure, you shouldn't try to make a habit of arguing with the judge just because they didn't call it your way. That's an example of, right? We said you shouldn't be afraid to call a judge, but arguing with the judge, that's where it goes. There it can go a little bit too far. So that's like my little soapbox about tournament etiquette at these high level competitive
Yeah.
events.
No, that's a good kind of segue into what um, Nima basically brings up every single time that he gives judge comments. Whenever you do an event, whether it be a small event or a big event, you should always do some sort of opening speech or judge comments, right? Sometimes it's the same person. Sometimes you've got a team so you can bounce between people. But what, I like to say and what Nima likes to say is that, first of all, you should point out who your judges are, whether they wear an identifying shirt or a hat or something to point them out. What a judge call is, to raise your hand, say consular, and keep it up until somebody has come to your table. And then, to not be afraid to call and then make that appeal if you're not, confident that ruling was the correct one. The other thing that I will like to remind people, and this is a good primer for those who go into Adepticon, is again, I want to call back to what I said earlier. The judge's job is to keep the game state moving. Nobody has ever played a perfect game of Legion. It's never happened. You have never 100% correctly played a game of Legion. I guarantee you, no matter how long or how good you think you are at this game. So don't take it as that opportunity to get somebody on something, or to catch somebody in the act, or do something to gain an advantage. It is there to keep the game moving so you can finish the game. If their ruling is imperfect and you think it could be done better, then that's what you go to the appeal process for. But if you're, constantly asking for rulings and getting ruled against every time, we might also talk to you and be like, hey, this is a resource for the entirety of the room that you are using up, because you are constantly calling them over for things that really shouldn't be rulings anymore. So I also like to caution, hey, don't be afraid to use it, but if you're constantly taking that resource for reasons that it better be put, or it might be put better somewhere else, I might have that discussion with you as well. And I think also one of the important things that you pointed out is, yes, don't forget they're people. They are there to do that function. They don't get to play. They just have to work usually the entire time and serve that function. And I've seen a lot of judges that have made a call and they've gone back to a table and been like, hey, we looked this up after the fact. The game has moved on. You don't have the same game state anymore. But I want you to know for next game, this is how the ruling should have gone.
Mm.
And I really appreciate people that fill that TO role, fill that judge role. Keep that in mind too. There's nothing wrong with looking it up later and admitting you were wrong and letting them know, hey, I don't want you to play that rule wrong in the future. I apologize that I missed it on this pass. Here's the ruling so you can play it right in your next pass. So that's something for people to keep in mind too.
A good tip is if you have a list. I mean, a lot of times things just happen. You're playing in a game, you played it 100 times, and you suddenly encounter this game state where you're like, I have no clue what happens here, right? It happens to all of us. If you have a list where there are a number of, let's say, less than common interactions with it, they're kind of maybe fringe rules that maybe a lot of people don't know how they work, but you know how they work because you played those units, and there are forum rulings that are relevant to those. It's not a bad idea to have some forum rulings pulled up on your phone in case A, so you can show your opponent, B, so if your opponent likes to call over a judge, which again is normal. Don't be offended if your opponent wants to call a judge. It's nice to be able to have this and say, hey, judge, can we talk about this? If it would help you, I do have a forum ruling that talks about this, because judges are not going to have every single forum ruling memorized, right? That's a useful thing you can do if you know your list has a couple things about it that are kind of funny. So anyway, that's some practical advice you can have.
It
I mean,
also like
that's tournament etiquette 101. Know your own stuff.
know your stuff, and then like having
So
those form
that's
rulings
good.
like pulled up,
Yeah.
like that can help you save that shared resource. And I know judges usually grant time extensions if things take a long time, but the fewer of those, the better, because like we don't want to have to track like 100 time extensions or whatever. Maybe
Yeah,
not
for
100,
sure.
maybe like 10, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
More than one gets messy.
Right, more than one gets messy because you got like multiple judges, each with their own clock. You're like, oh, I'm tracking table 22 or whatever.
Right.
And it gets to be a huge mess, and it is like LJ said, it's a matter of etiquette. Yeah, to just know
Yeah.
your stuff.
Yeah, but Jen, we do want to reemphasize we're talking about the bad parts, but yeah, it's still despite all the stuff that we said, right? Still, don't be afraid to call a judge. And for 99% of you are not going to be. If you're worried about calling the judge too much, you are not the person who's calling the judge too much. I'll just put it that way. You don't want to weaponize the judges at a way to try to bully people to give you a 50-50 shot at getting your way on things that you shouldn't have, right? That's not what we want to use judges for. But
Absolutely not.
if there's any sort of a sincere question, if there's a close line of sight call, you really think it could go either way, but both players are biased, right? If there's no shame in calling the judge. If you can call multiple times in the same game, it's not a big deal. If you've called them 5 times in 20 minutes, that's probably too much. That's the sign that it's happening too often, right? But like I said, if you're worried that you're calling them too much, you're probably not the person that's calling them too much.
So I want to move on a little bit to what we're going to see at the event in terms of units played, since this is our Adepticon pre-show. First question: ARFs being pushed back. How much of an effect will that have? I don't know if it will, and that's really what I want to tease out here. Like, do we think that the absence of Jedi Guardians will make a big difference?
Honestly, I'm gonna say no, because I don't think they're really gonna open up a space that you can't recreate. Let's say at least with like 80% effectiveness within GAR already. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure that last 20% of melee sauce they give to the army opens it up in a way that would break the meta. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not. It's really cool, and like I liken it to crabs. It gives like a capability that might have not been there in that same way previously for droids, but it's not like crabs have totally opened up droids and crab-based droid lists are just ruining everybody's fun. It added a cool capability that is a nice addition to the army. I feel like Jedi Guardians specifically will be that for the clones, and that the ARF unit themselves is I really wanted to see the fives ARF unit be on the table and wreck
Mm-hmm.
somebody's day, because I
Right.
think there was the Echo
Yeah.
variety.
Echo ARFs.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the Echo variety I think was really going to ruin some people's days, but again, like, I'm not sure that's a capability that you couldn't have replicated elsewhere.
Right.
So no, at the end of the day, no.
Nathan, what do you
Gar,
think?
yeah, I'm kind of a similar opinion. I think when it comes to arc units with the Jedi Guardians, I think some of the other arc unit leader upgrades, specifically the captain and the commander, are probably better, just because they can shoot, and then that commander just generates you that surge, which is so valuable. And then as far as like the ARFs, yeah, I agree. I think the Echo build is probably the most interesting, but it is expensive.
Hmm.
Right.
And Gar, to be honest, if you really want range 4, you really want impact, or you really want like a powerful range 4, I mean, Gar ATRTs are super good. They're 70 points, 6 red save wounds behind armor 2, and they got the range 4 and the scout and the impact and all that stuff. And then if you're looking for like a chunkier range 4, like what that Echo would do, it's like saber tanks are good, man. Like, not enough people have been playing around with beam saber tanks. They're
I love
disgusting.
beam saber tanks.
I remember the first time I got
Uh,
destroyed by a beam saber tank beam ISP list. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that was quite a wake up call. It was early in 260,
I
and I was
faced a
like,
Beam ISP in my tournament recently, and he was chewing through my B1s really fast, and I was like, "Wow,
yeah,
I have to kill that thing.
B
My
ones get
B1 blob will not survive."
wrecked so hard by
They
beam
do.
weapons.
It's so absurd. Like beam
Honestly,
beam
yeah.
ISPs are nuts into B1s.
Any core. I had a whole kind of gun line of Storm DLTs in that game that I played against. The Saber and the ISP and that Saber tank and that ISP together, my stormtroopers just were all deleted by like round 3 or 4. They're just
Wow.
all gone. So anyway, yeah, Guards got they have range 4 firepower. Not enough people are doing that Saber tank thing, and they have. It's not like the Arc was somehow granting them this niche that they didn't have. It's like they've already got great melee options.
Yeah, they got
So
Anakin.
yeah, yeah, they got Anakin. Just, I mean, arcs. I mean, even naked arcs for 64
Yeah,
points with tactical and
right. With all the keywords and the charge, and it's
yeah,
crazy good. 8 black for 64. That's crazy.
with tactical and sharpshooter and
Yeah.
charge. Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
so. The ARFs. It'll be cool when they get in. I don't think they're going to be this big meta shakeup that was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they were going to be the big thing, but now they're not there.
I was really hoping that like we'd find something with the low profile red save. Feed it a surge. This unit should tank like crazy because low profile canceling hits and then red saves with surge. That could have been something. Could have been a contender. Yeah. Anyway, I really feel like it's a wide open field because I had a conversation with Ollie, the defending world champ. Okay, he's going to be there, and I don't know if the crown is going to stay in the UK. Like, I really don't know because it's a wide open field. Like
I,
Luke Cook is coming back, right? Do y'all know?
I don't know.
I don't remember if he is.
He said maybe last I saw.
Yeah,
But
But
that's
I
what
don't
he says
know why we're
before
talking
most
about Luke.
majors.
or then he shows up and then he like wins the whole thing.
I don't know why we're talking about Luke and Ollie. I'm playing in this thing.
Well, duh, Nathan. Of course.
So are you playing in the try hard day or the gimme day?
Ooh,
Difference? I'm playing Friday. Is that the hard
Gotcha.
day?
yeah.
That's the day with less people. So no, that's the gimme day.
It's less people, but with more names.
Hey,
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
the biggest name, the highest ranked player on Longshanks this year at LVO was in the GT. You never know. They weren't in the champs. They were in the GT.
There you
So
go.
you really can't judge it by those metrics. As much as I like to make fun of it, no, I think like every year there's going to be people that we don't know or we're not as familiar with that are going to surprise us. The person that won uh, the previous year, not the last year's World Ollie, but the person before that, it was he went by like Gorechild on online. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it was
Dinesh.
yes,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah.
it was not the person that was discussed on podcast and in the through line of large events.
hmm
Michael Losi, who won the LVOIS champs, nobody knew.
Yeah, kind of an unknown.
Kevin Clow, who won the GT, nobody knew.
hmm
So I think it is very possible that somebody comes out of left field amongst a bunch of big names, quote unquote, because when you get to day two, when you're past the heats, that's when you're going to hit your lose and you're out.
hmm
So anything can happen in those games because what we have seen throughout almost all of Legion's history, but I think especially over the last couple of years, is player skill, player familiarity with a list still wins games.
Oh yeah.
You have people that are running, janky stuff, off the wall stuff that maybe is, below the power curve, but in the hands of the right pilot, it's still doing well. And I think that the way that we have to run tournaments because of time, and you get to a point where the cut, maybe not a cut, but a win and you continue situation is present, even if it's still Swiss for everybody. It it allows somebody to maybe jump forward that would surprise you because they had a good game, and somebody that you would have thought would have won with the super medalist did not. You know, we saw the Luke Cook versus Kyle matchup round one in a previous worlds, and it's like usually that means one of those people is not moving on, and that doesn't always happen at the last table at the sixth or seventh round of an event. Sometimes that can happen very early on. So I love seeing these fields develop because you really don't know what's going to happen, and I think it opens the possibility for what Ollie did last year coming out of left field with Shadow Collective
Right.
to possibly happen again this year to somebody else. Or maybe he's put the same amount of work and commitment into a list and that pays off for him again and we get a repeat. So
Yeah, it could also just be a numbers game. I know that like international attendance is there's a little bit less of a draw internationally for a variety of reasons. Um, but I know that like by the numbers, right, it will come back and be an American player or a U.S. player. I mean, not American, but U.S. player that wins.
The list that I'm bringing, I've just had a lot of reps with it, so it's like it's just what I'm bringing at this point because it's what I have reps with, and I don't
Mhm.
have reps with a lot of stuff. If I had more time to test more things, a Black Sun would definitely be what I'm looking at. It's
Yeah.
probably what I'm going to take to Invader Leagues. I'm going to want a different list. We're going to be sick of this one by the time World is over.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
probably in the Invader League that's coming up. I think I'll be doing Maul, Black Sun, Mandos because you can fit all of that with 12 activations.
Yes, you can, and you can have
Love
a
it.
force push on
And
Maul too.
you can put
Love
it
it.
on our Winter Moon Discord. I think the other day I put that up
Yeah.
there. Yeah, 12
Or
active.
team Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Maybe we'll leak it to the public Discord sometime. I don't know.
yeah. It seems really good though. It's like I have like list ADHD, and I've in previous Adepticons I've have often swapped lists last minute. And what's funny is last year was the best I've ever done at an Adepticon. I
hmm
got made it to the quarterfinals and got best Empire player last year,
There
and
you
it was a
go.
list that I swapped to like 48 hours before list lock, and I hadn't played it.
Nice.
I hadn't played it once,
Well,
but
that's a feat though. Going to the
Yeah.
quarters on that low reps.
well, it's a I that's what's funny is you'd think that you'd do worse, but I think I was more able to do that in the original edition, because here's what I'll say about list reps.
Mm-hmm.
You are building a list and you haven't necessarily played that exact list before, but you've played all the pieces, and this is the first time you've put them together this way. Then you can still make it work on low reps. And that's what happened with me last year. It was a list that it was it was Vader, Lat, Dark Troopers. This is back when we could support Vader or Dark Troopers. It was 7 activations.
Oh my goodness!
Not 7 activations. It was 7 units.
7 units, but 9 acts.
Yeah. No. It was 8 acts.
8
7
acts.
units.
Okay. Oh, you don't have 1 Dark Trooper. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. It doesn't seem like it'd be that good. But it was great. But it was all pieces I had used before. I'd used Darks before. I'd used Transports before. I'd used Vader before. So I knew how it all would work, even though I hadn't played it before. In this new edition, I don't know the objectives well enough. That's part of why we're doing this series. That's part of why we wanted to do this thing on all the objectives. I think we're all still learning them a bit, and I don't have like, even though we get on them every week and we talk about them, I don't have like the muscle memory yet for these objectives the same way I do. So I kind of got to take a list that I have reps with, because I'm like, I got to, when we start an objective, when we're starting shifting, when we're starting recover, whatever, I gotta know what my game plan is for my list, because I'm not quite there yet where I can take a list completely blind, play an objective I've never done that list with before, done a secondary, and like know immediately what my plan is. I'm just not there yet with the new edition. I suspect I'm probably not the only one, right? I think it'll be a bit before those of us that like to do that are really going to be able to go in blind to these big tournaments with our lists.
I think it would probably take me another year of play, frankly. I mean, I'm going to be in it for the long haul. I'm going to be here till Legion goes away, but which is hopefully never. And like you say, Nathan, like I really do think, like, for me to have the level of muscle memory that I had with the previous edition, I would need to play these objectives for another year. But the cool thing is that's not happening, because there's going to be new objective cards that they've announced. They announced those at Gamma.
Cool.
Right?
That'll another wrinkle, which,
and they're going to do rotations, they said, at Gamma.
Yeah, that's what they've said on some of the other interviews. They've been, the wills have been going around, and I think they did a couple. It was like a part 1 and part 2 with 5th Trooper. They did a couple interviews with Gray Squadron, probably others that I don't remember off the top of my head. But they'll be doing one with us,
yeah,
right?
They're going to come on our show on the Saturday after the panel reveal, and we'll talk about the panel reveal, and we'll definitely talk about the future of objectives and battle deck and things like that, because that's for me, that's a hot topic as a competitor, because I want to know, like, because I personally have a philosophy of, I build the army partially around the battle deck, and I'm still in that mode. It might be an old way of thinking, but I was a firm believer that, like, battle deck informs list, and then it's kind of a two-way street, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I want to play these 2 units. What do these 2 units do well? Or I want to play this hero. What does this hero do well at? And then I'll make the rest of the list fit. But there's always like some interaction between units I choose and things I include in my battle deck. There's always going to be an interaction there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We're at some point in the near future, we're going to do an episode where top to bottom we just talk about how to construct a battle deck. Kind of after we finish going through, we've gone through the primaries now. We're going to go through the secondaries next, and maybe one episode about advantages, maybe.
Yeah.
But spoiler alert: Vincent tells the best one. Shocker.
Yeah, shocker.
That episode's done.
It's like the ice cold take of the century.
Yeah. No heat there. But so we'll talk more about this. But I think what Dave said is insightful. There is a little bit of a back and forth. I think, at least for me, I start with what units I like. I want to play. Sometimes it's a unit that I'm like, oh, this unit's busted. Sometimes it's more like, everyone thinks this unit sucks. I bet I can make it good, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of that in there too.
Yeah.
A lot of times you surprise yourself, right? If you find the right niche. But then you kind of go back and forth, right? You start with the unit, you fill out the rest of the list, you take your battle deck, but then you look at the list and you look at the battle deck and you go, oh, actually, I don't know if these pieces are really going to work with what's going on. So then you got to carve some of it out, and you got to put a new bit in. but then maybe that makes you adjust the battle deck a little bit more, and then you kind of just keep adjusting it back and forth until you finally find that right balance where it kind of feels good. And then if you don't hit there, if you're really working on the battle deck and you're working on the list and you're going back and forth and you just can't feel like you can make a battle deck that really feels like it gels with the list, you might just need to step back a little bit and do some like more evaluation, because you do, at the end of the day, it's fun to shoot things. It's fun to watch your tears stream down your opponent's face as they pick their models up off the table. But it's about objectives at the end of the day. So you got to be able to get on the points. You got to be able to score.
Every time I take my opponent's models off the board, I take a piece of their soul. It's like there's always some little joy in there. It's like, yes, victory.
I played at a local just I was gonna say yesterday, 2 days ago, on Saturday, and I made it to the final table at the end, and we were both playing Dooku Aquas, and we had a Dooku battle, and he swiped on my Dooku, rolled 5 for 5, and then I rolled 2 out of 5. And then he has that Pierce. And so just watching 4 wounds get thrown on my Dooku at once there, I had that feeling. I was like, oh.
Those Dooku versus Dooku fights are they're so like,
it can be a little,
you're on a knife edge always, because that can happen.
I don't like doing Dooku versus Dooku
Me
fights.
either.
That's like my game plan has gone wrong.
It's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can't be helped, because it's like, I'm fighting over the middle and shifting,
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes
it can't be helped, but other times it can be.
But it was funny. Our Dooku slapped each other, and then we both played on the next turn. We were both expecting the other person to play the 1 pit, but we both played double the fall. So I just went into it, and neither of our Dookus had orders.
Oh my gosh!
We were both just
racing for Dooku in the bag.
Yeah, you have the mercy of the bag.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Spoiler alert: he pulled his Dooku first.
No, darn it!
That tells you how the game went.
Sometimes it comes down to those chance-based things. Like,
I made other mistakes though. There's other.
Yeah.
You can whine about the tokens and the dice, but I thought all the drive home thought about that loss in the final table. I should have been pushing further up on this objective. Should have had my units better place to score faster.
That resonates so hard with me.
All the stuff that we talk about on the cast all the time, I just went out the window in my last game. But that's why we lose games, so that we learn.
Yeah. That's why we losing is what is it Yoda says in Last Jedi, the greatest teacher failure is.
What movie is that?
Rise of Skywalker, not Rise, Last Jedi.
Never heard of that movie.
Oh, come on.
You're starting to get predictable now.
You're subverting my expectations, Nathan.
I knew you were pulling the rug out on that one.
Yeah. No, I'll maybe one day we'll do an After Dark cast where we give like our sequel opinions. I'm going to sound really obnoxious, but like, I have a nuanced opinion on the sequels.
Nuanced.
Yeah. I don't.
Your extended pinky.
Yeah. I don't hate The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I don't hate it either.
But yeah, I don't. You could make an argument that it's the best one of the trilogy.
Some of the writing is super awkward, but that's true for almost every single Star Wars movie.
That the middle one is the best one.
No. That there's some awkward writing.
Oh, there's some awkward writing.
There's some awkward writing in all of them.
Yeah, it's a feature of Star Wars.
Yeah. LJ, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate so much your presence on the show. Again, it's LVOIS.com for those of you who are interested in signing up and becoming part of the circuit. And then it's wintermoonwargaming.substack.com for those of you that want to find out all about the streaming that's going to happen when this episode drops and enter the giveaway and do all those good things that we mentioned on the cast earlier. I'll timestamp it so you don't have to listen to me say it all again. But yes, we're going to land this plane. So I am David. I'm joined by Nathan, and we were joined by LJ today. Thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. We're going to see you at Adepticon. We're actually going to take a break next week. There's going to be no episode. We're going to be taking a break for Adepticon. So thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you there on Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Wintermoon Wargaming YouTube, youtube.com/@WintermoonWargaming. Thanks, everybody, once again. We'll see you there.
See ya.